Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm delighted to be here. It just feels so good to see real people in front of you, have a real audience, and be back here, meet so many faces again after 16, 17 months of lockdown and lockup. It wasn't so much a lockdown for Demecan because we were quite busy trying to set up our facility near Dresden to eventually bring the first product to Germany, to the market. As Peter has rightly said, it's about time that we see our first production. And I will come to that too, though today the topic of my presentation is on our cooperation with the Cannabis Agency. We are basically a contractual manufacturer for a government agency. If you have listened to Charling's speech beforehand, you know that the OMC is part of the cannabis supply chain, and so is the German Cannabis Agency. And I just want to give you basically a hands-on, first-hand experience of what is it like to deal with the Cannabis Agency, who are the people at the Cannabis Agency, and what their work looks like and how we interact. And maybe that gives you a feel of our day-to-day hassles and excitements, or week-to-week excitements. The program for today, where do I point this? Maybe I use this then. A couple of chapters. I want to focus main part on our interaction with the Cannabis Agency, but then also tell you a bit about what it means to run a facility in Germany. You all know GMP, and I think you've heard a lot about GMP. There are some specifics in Germany, and that are our tight security measures. We are producing in a former meat packing and slaughterhouse, and that has a reason. That's the security measures, and I come to that. I want to talk to you a little bit about the distribution channel so you know what we are doing and what we are not doing, what the Cannabis Agency is responsible for. And last but not least, to touch upon what Peter said in one of his last remarks is what is German production as compared to the imports that we see right now coming to Germany. So what will be the market position? Quick introduction about myself for those who don't know me. In fact, I am still a licensed lawyer, not currently practicing because my whole attention is now on cannabis. But I did practice as a lawyer in the Berlin office. I also spent some time in New York, in London, and in Colombia. So I got around quite a bit. My profession was always in regulation and regulatory public law. I then left the legal realm, not to go into cannabis, but to work for the administration. I worked for the Ministry of Economics as their advisor on public holdings. I've also spent some time even closer to politics. I worked as the personal assistant to Dr. Steinmeier, who's now our president. Back in the days, he was our opposition party leader. So those were very interesting times in the Bundestag. I got to know the administration, the political process, the legal process. So that's why my two co-founders, Adrian and Cornelius, one is a medical doctor, the other is an economist, thought I might be an okay fit to start Demecan together with them. So I left the administration and started Demecan. And quite obviously, I'm responsible at Demecan for the regulatory matters, for the legal matters. And then if you're a startup, you always have to deal with some things that you were not trained in. So I'm responsible for HR as well. Shareholder relations became a topic. Investor relations is something I'm dealing with, and I'm happy to speak to you also about all the corporate affairs that come with running a company with now over 50 employees. What is the process about Demecan? A few words of introduction. We are one of 3 companies that have won the license to produce cannabis in Germany. We are the only independent German company, so we are not the subsidiary of either a Canadian or a US company. It was originally just the 3 of us, Adrian, Cornelius, and myself, and then we brought some investors on board in 2019. All German family offices, all entrepreneurs themselves, fortunately with more money than Adrian, Cornelius, and me had at that time. With that money, we managed to purchase our production facility, of which we were prior just a tenant. That gave us a certain flexibility to do the build out to the means that we required. In particular, focus on the restructuring of some of the narcotic walls, expanding in parts where we wanted, and really focusing on the medicinal cannabis production. So this facility, when it was originally built, was built as a meat packing factory. It's an old slaughterhouse. You can maybe see at this picture at the one end, live cows and pigs would come in. On the other hand, on the other side of the facility, they would come out in cans, right? So it was like food processing. Sounds a bit macabre for us. Of course, the standards for food processing is something that we could build on. And a lot of the things we can still use. However, the restructuring was quite intense and is still going on. We have what we call the Richtfest planned for last October. We're doing it now in July, and then the construction is done. We bring in the equipment, and then we start cultivating, hopefully this summer, maybe September, maybe October. And then if you do the math and you have a 3 to 4 month cycle, we should be ready to deliver to Bee Farm at some point between November, December, January next year, our first batches. What you see there is all real pictures. The third picture is our current research area in which we are already cultivating. So we have 3 mother rooms and 6 flower rooms already live, where we select plants, we grow them. We really want to see the plant material that we will end up delivering to Bee Farm. It's limited to certain types of flower that we can use. But however, there's still a lot of flexibility. Those of you who deal with cultivars knows that there's a broad variety, and we want to limit it down to 2 or 3 high potentials that we really like, and then put them into the commercial cultivation eventually. And this is actually I think one of our real flowers that we harvested in one of our pilot harvests, of which we've done like a couple already, like 6 or 7 so. Now let's talk about what it's like to be working, to be a supplier for the Cannabis Agency. And I'm saying Cannabis Agency and not Bee Farm because it is something different. I know it's used very often interchangeably. And the first thing I wanted to do, I want you to show you the little bit of a difference. And that is important if you deal with them on a day-to-day basis, because it's different departments within maybe the same authority. For those of you who are well familiar with regulations, you will all know that. So that's no news to you, but it kind of gives you an idea of what it means like to have the Bee Farm or the Cannabis Agency as your purchaser. So what we see here is the Bee Farm's org chart. This is all the things that Bee Farm does. Massive office under the realm of the Ministry of Health. Thousands of employees work there. It's quite massive. If you go to Bonn, if you visit them, it's behind the Maritime Hotel. It's a huge office, and they have several departments, and they're responsible for so many things: for medical devices, for natural herbs, for drug licensing in general, and for narcotic licensing. I highlighted here the Cannabis Agency in yellow, the small square, and I also highlighted the Bundesopiumstelle, which is responsible for the narcotics licensing. These are the 2 departments that we are dealing with. The Bundesopiumstelle, the narcotics licensing department, a couple of you will know, because whoever wants to bring cannabis product into Germany or actually export it out of Germany would have to go to them to get a narcotic handling license. So that is independent from cannabis. It has been there before. It's been there since like the 1920s. That's why it's called opioid department, when narcotics and opioids were still used like simultaneously. And then in 2017, when the legislation changed and medicinal cannabis became more widely accepted, we already had about 1,000 special patients. According to the UN Convention, Germany had to set up a cannabis agency. And that is this cute, small, tiny little department or sub-department in Division 4 of the Bee Farm. So the Bee Farm is the big thing with so many departments, and you have this small little subsection, it's the Cannabis Agency. The Cannabis Agency is run by Professor Dr. Knöss, and I think right now he has 6 people working with him, 6 or 7. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the Cannabis Agency. And those 7 people control the production in Germany by Aurora, Afria, and by Demecan. The one good thing for us is that Professor Knöss is also the vice president of Bee Farm. So while he has his focus very much on cannabis and is, I think, an adamant supporter of cannabis as a medicine in Germany and is really like helpful in the process, he also has the big picture of being the vice president of Bee Farm. So this kind of puts everything into perspective. When we talk about Cannabis Agency, that's a small little entity that we talk about. This is who we sell the product to. Those are the people who come to our facility and inspect us. When we talk about the Bundesopiumstelle, also sometimes called B-Farm, we talk about a whole different department, many more employees working for them. And when we talk about B-Farm, we talk about the whole thing. And everything is under the control of the Ministry of Health. So let's zoom into the Cannabis Agency again. What was their main task that kept them busy for the first 2 years of their existence in 2017 and 2018? Even into 2019, it's tendering out cannabis licenses. Unfortunately, the UN Convention kind of stipulates that all cannabis produced in a country has to be purchased by that country or by that country's cannabis agency. Germany, being the master student or like wanting to be the best in class, following the code, quite literally set up the cannabis agency and initiated a tender process to tender out the amounts to be produced in Germany. They copied that exactly from the Netherlands, or more or less exactly from the Netherlands. And that kept them busy. It's a very bureaucratic administrative process, something that I love, and that's why I think one of the reasons why we succeeded in this whole process. Unfortunately, the first attempt had to be canceled because of some formal reasons. There wasn't enough time given in the pre-selection. I spare you the details. It was a big downer moment in early 2018 when the first tender, 117 applicants put applications in. Demecan was selected among the top 10. We interviewed with the Cannabis Agency. We thought we had won the jackpot already, and then the whole tender was canceled. So that's why the whole process was delayed by an entire year. So the tender had to be relaunched, process changed a little bit. We applied again, and we were awarded in 2019, eventually, one of the production lots in the whole tender. So that's basically what Cannabis Agency has done so far and what they will do in the future. Because these tenders is for 4 years initially, and I would say after 3 years roundabout, they will start tendering out new lots. Hopefully, Demecan can win again, but the process will be open again. What they also do is they need to, once they bought the product, they will have to ship it to the pharmacies. They have to distribute it to the pharmacies. So last year they selected a distributor as a service provider to help distribute the product to the pharmacies. It is their product, so we produce it, and there's a Demecan label on the product, but there's also a B-Farm label on the product. So they are the one who market it, who are responsible towards the customer, towards patients. So they have to very closely audit us. And that's what I'm going to talk about now. It's like how they do that, how they make sure that what we produce is really what we promised. Maybe one close look again at the tender process I just talked about and about the outcome of it. May 17 is one of the dates we cherish. May 20th, I think, is when we received the final green light for Demecan. It was then challenged again, but finally, that's when it was determined that we can now eventually produce cannabis for us. And the total quantity that was tendered out initially was 8 tons. We talked about quantity before. In the first tender in 2017, when they relaunched in 2018, they already realized that they should tender out more. So that went up to 10.4 tons. And I can disclose here that we've just been approached by the Cannabis Agency to increase that even again by another 10%, which is permissible under law. So they really want us to produce the maximum we can because they are aware that there is currently a shortage of flower in the market, and there will definitely be a shortage of German products or products made in Germany will not be able to provide enough product for the entire market. What is the product that we're going to provide to the market? Because there's always a lot of debate. How much is it really? The details are complicated. As a rule of thumb, it's 3 types of flowers. And when we talk about types of flowers, that is defined by their THC and CBD content. It does not mean 3 types of strains. So Demecan has lots for 2 types of flowers. So we'll have a high THC and a medium THC strain. And our 2 strains will be different from the strains that Aurora and Afria will produce, if they produce. I think Afria is Aurora, I don't know. And So eventually, the made in German products will be 2 different strains from Demecan, it will be 2 strains from Aurora, and it will be 3 strains from Afria. And this will go as different types. And these type 1, type 2, type 3 is basically copied or leaned on what was in the market from Bedrocan in 2016, 2017. That's where this idea comes from, to go in a range between 18 and 22%, to go in a range between 12 and 18%, and to go in a range between 5 and 9%. As I said, we're already selecting the strains that we eventually want to use. We have a couple of backups, and we really want to use the ones that we think are best for the patient. And our quantities, how are the quantities calculated? So you win production lots. Aurora and Afria won 5 production lots. We won 3 production lots. Each production lot is for 200 kilogram. And that's why there's often this figure contemplated. Aurora has a ton, Afria has a ton, and Demecan has 600 kilograms. Yes, that's right, but and that's one example how I think that the contract is actually done very well. We can overproduce up to 50%. Because BfArM, because the Cannabis Agency, they know that we're dealing with a natural product. If you want us to produce 600 kilograms, we have to aim for more. Our production facility will be set up for over a ton, actually, for over 1.5 tons. And we'll aim to produce like for probably about a ton, maybe 1,100, 1,200 kilograms. We go for the max because things will go wrong, right? You'll have to lose some of the crops. Some of the harvests you run, some of the batches you'll just have to throw out. But what if you are successful and you've actually produced enough quality and you've done a good job? And then BfArM would say, like, we can only take 600 kilograms. That would be sad. That's why they allowed us to do an overproduction of 50%. Priced a little bit differently than the first 600, but that's why we're having an offtake guarantee from Cannabis Agency for 900 kilograms, and Aurora and Afria have an offtake guarantee for 1.5 tons. So that maybe explains a little bit the confusion that you sometimes see around the quantities that can be produced. And I think it's a great example of how this contract was designed with a certain flexibility, taken into account that we're a cultivator of a natural product, and we're not producing like a car manufacturer, like on the dot quantity, but our crop might just go bad. Another thing I wanted to highlight when we talk about the Cannabis Agency, and I mentioned it at the beginning, we are a contractual manufacturer for them, and our product will be bought by the Cannabis Agency, and they will be the entity responsible for marketing the whole product. They'll therefore be the pharmaceutical manufacturer, and they bear responsibility. And that's also why they limited the number of producers, because they have to audit all the producers in Germany. That's why they're never going to give out 50 or 100 licenses, because they couldn't control all these people. They physically come to our facility. They've already been there. They'll come again probably in September. Definitely before we have our first shipment out. We have, and I come to that, how we cooperate together, but they're very close, they have a very close scrutiny about what we're doing, because they're responsible for bringing the product into the market. Since everything took a while and since what we are producing is not enough for the market, the Demecan has set up a side business where we import product as well. So we know how to cultivate cannabis. I think by now we've seen a lot of plants. We've experimented ourselves. So we've now have a couple of selected suppliers from which we also purchase white label and sell that directly to the pharmacies. But for the product done in Germany, that is basically Cannabis Agency's product that we contractually manufacture for them. So that's an important fact to bear in mind. And it shows you that there's some shared responsibility between us and the Cannabis Agency. So it's not only always top down, like with the Narcotics Agency, where they say, yada, yada, do, you have to do this and that, but where they understand, okay, eventually it's going to be our product, and we want it to be sold as well. So how does that work on a daily basis? There is basically 3 elements: monthly reports, status calls, and site visits. So we have a fixed routine of every month we send our report, a lengthy report that contains status of the construction, that contains our cultivation efforts, what are our licensing processes, have we applied for the narcotics license yet, what is the process of our GMP certification, our HR, who have we hired in the staff, really a close keeping track on where we stand with building and setting up our production facility. It's sometimes painful to prepare this report, but it really forces you to be diligent on what you do and keep track on where you stand. Of course, during the times of the pandemic, it was even more painful to to write these reports. Everything was delayed, but it also allowed us to give cannabis agencies necessary transparency that they were involved and they understood that we cannot full force build out the facility and run into the risk that suddenly, let's say, the roofing people get sick because some of them catches corona. The roofing isn't done, and the electricity people come here and they want to start putting in the electricity. It wasn't possible. We had to, put in safety nets, just everything got more extended. And I think this monthly reporting helped us communicate early with the cannabis agency. And a report isn't too helpful if you don't talk about it. So every month we have a call with the cannabis agency, with Professor Knös and his agents who are responsible for us, where you can discuss everything. You can also discuss some of the things off the record. You can get a bit of a feel like what's the tendency, what is happening everywhere else in Europe. What do you guys think about product coming in from Uruguay being GMP certified in Portugal or Malta and then shipped crisscross around the country, and suddenly it ends up as GMP certified product in Germany. And you get a bit of a sense of what they like and what they don't like, what they would like to stop, what they can't stop. And that's very helpful also when you build the whole business. So it gives us a very good insight in the thinking of the Cannabis Agency and of BfArM, since Professor Knös is the vice president of BfArM. And the best, of course, is having them around. This was not possible during COVID, but right before, like in September, was the last time they visited, and hopefully now they're going to come again and see the facility. Everybody else here in the room is invited. We have to set up appointments, but you're happy to invite you all and to come and see the facility, see for yourself. I think it's very impressive. And you only get an idea of what it means to set all these up when you've actually been there and visited and get a feel for the magnitude of it. Come to a close with regard to that part of my presentation, the cooperation with the Cannabis Agency. Overall, I think it's very positive. I've been on the government side, I've been on the administration side, really. And I know the one thing you want to do is you want to get the work off your desk and you want to make sure you don't make a mistake, because if the company is successful, nobody's going to pat your shoulder. If some company fails, there's a scandal, you're the one who's responsible. You haven't monitored them closely enough. Cannabis Agency has been very progressive and helpful. We can discuss things we have. They are aware that they're new in the game. They are aware that we are new in the game. And it's a very, it's a new market. Things are developing fast. And we have to be flexible to an extent. There's a legal core set of the narcotics law, of the medicinal law, and of the procurement law. But within this core set, within this framework, I would say it's a raw model of a cooperation. And I'm glad that the people at the Cannabis Agency are, I think, pro-medicinal cannabis, pro-production in Germany, and are really supportive. I wish we could have delivered to them last November as originally planned, and hopefully we can do it as soon as possible this year. With that, basically 3 more slides, one covering the security measures, one the distribution to the pharmacies, and one production in Germany versus imports. On the security measures, they are tight, and of course I cannot talk about what exactly we are doing. Our perimeters, security perimeters, our alarm system, and trust me, we have a lot, and the police has come a lot to visit and inspect and help us set everything up. I can only say that we'll probably have the safest cannabis facility on Earth. Maybe Afria's is just as good, or maybe Aurora's, but definitely the German system is super tight. Why is that the case? Because they don't differentiate between storing any narcotic drug, be it heroin, opioids, or whatever, and cultivating a cannabis plant. So basically what they did, they just took the existing law of storing a narcotic drug and said, this is what you have to abide by. So you have to store it in a vault, right? And suddenly we were supposed to cultivate cannabis in a vault, basically in a bunker type building. There are no such buildings around, so you'd have to build from scratch. That costs lots of money. It's ridiculous. Only Canadian stock companies have this money, apparently, or they don't anymore. We didn't have that money at the time, so we spent a lot of time scouting around for an existing facility that fulfills these criteria. It's just 2 pages of criteria. I put them up for you. And these 2 pages contain the essence of all the pain that we had to go through. And one of the line is, it's the mechanical security. It's just the thickness of the walls, of the roof, and of the floor. 240 centimeter thick roof. Find a building that has such a thick roof. Nobody builds an industrial facility anymore with a roof that thick. It makes no sense. Fortunately, when you do meat processing and maybe you've been into a facility or seen videos, you see the corpse of the cows or of the pork going along the roof, along the ceiling, right? And that's why the ceiling of our facility had to be so thick, because it had to bear the weight of the cow and the pork corpse. So thanks to the dead animals, we are now able to really cultivate cannabis according to German requirements, right? We get lucky when we found the building. Back in the day, we worked with a Canadian company. We were lucky to purchase it for a very reasonable price. And now the mechanical security has been set up. And then electric monitoring is added to that. It's noise detectors that you have to put up. Noise detectors to make sure that if you hear it, an alarm goes off if you drill through the walls. You kind of say that kind of sensible, right? 5 minutes. That kind of makes sense, right? You want to hear if somebody drills through the walls, but these noise sensors are so sensitive, they even detect a constant scratching. So if you go like over a certain period of time, the alarm goes off because it sounds like somebody is quietly drilling a hole into your wall. So if you have an air condition unit that makes a sound like maybe this noise detector goes off, right? So yes, the police came around and we had to discuss it and deal with these things. So these are the day-to-day things that we have to talk to also about with Cannabis Agency, and that's where I was kind of hinting at that they are flexible to the extent like you have to follow the rules, but of course, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, there's a certain sense of cooperation in it. But apart from all this GMP things that we have to abide by, GACP, all these pharmaceutical requirements know of, we also have to build a tight-knit, secure facility, and that's what we're doing right now near Dresden. The good thing about having this facility, we can use it as a hub. The perimeter is 100,000 square meter. The facility itself is roughly 30,000 square meters, so it's vast. We're currently using probably 5 to 10,000 square meter, 5,000 square meter fully built out. Along the cannabis supply chain, we can do pretty much everything from cultivation through processing all the way to storaging. I should actually start earlier because even before cultivation, we do the research, we do R&D, we do genetics and plant selection. So really we can cover the whole thing in our cannabis hub. And then I said it, we can all the way until storing it, and then we'll hand it over to whoever is the licensed service provider to the Cannabis Agency, and they will do the last mile to the pharmacies. That's the only thing that we don't do anymore in our facility. Everything else we can do or will be able to do at our facility. So that's why we think it's a great asset for us, but also for the German and the European cannabis market, because it is really, truly a medical cannabis hub. And I think Germany needs that because if we look at the imports compared to the production, there's still a way to go for us when it comes to our own production. Imports, I think last year were roughly 1 ton of dried flower. Those figures are taken from the BFARM's website, so that was 2020. I hear latest figures that this is going up, but it's not crazy. And it's roughly 9 tons. We produce in Germany 2.6 tons plus the overproduction that I mentioned before. Rule of thumb, let's say like 4 tons can be produced in Germany. That's less than half. I would say it's not insignificant. I think it's a lot, but it will be more. The one thing I want to put your attention to is that when the tender started in 2018, when these quantities were basically determined, the market looked like around 3 tons of dried flower. So when people say that Cannabis Agency vastly underestimated the demand in Germany, I don't think that's really fair, because at a given market time, 2018, their estimate for the market being around 3, 4, maybe 5 tons, and they tendered out 2.6 tons. That meant they tendered out roughly 50%, maybe 60% of the market. And we think that's basically where Cannabis Agency wants to arrive at a certain point, have a substantial part, at least 50% of the market being produced in Germany, and then the rest will be supplemented by imports coming from other countries where they can produce cannabis to the same standards that we require here in Germany. That's just a wild guess. Dr. Knus didn't tell me that, but if you look at the numbers, that's maybe the kind of thinking that you could get into. So we're ready to produce more. We will see these numbers go up for sure, and we'll see more tenders in Germany for sure. But I also think we'll see imports to Germany more for sure, and quality is what is going to matter with regards to the imported flower. And on that, I want to thank you for your attention. This is a wide shot of the facility. You can see it in the back. On the top left, this is my little office in Ebersbach. Again, reach out to us. We'll make an appointment, have you come over to visit, and meet me afterwards for questions. Thank you so much.